a pair of collaborators in Brussels. And Helene and I visited them actually on that same trip that we went to Italy. We went up to Brussels to meet with them and had dinner with them. And they wrote an opera called Sacco and Vanzetti that's had over 100 performances in Flemish, in Holland and in Belgium. And we saw a performance of it at Yale in a terrible translation. I mean, the music is quite attractive. It's like more of a musical than an opera. But and there's one aria for Rosa, which is gorgeous. And I thought the translation was so terrible. I got a hold of the score, wrote a new translation of it, and Helene sang it at the National Committee to Reopen the Rosenberg Case meeting that we had every year when I was chairman of that, and then early part of the century in 2010. And it's a gorgeous piece. Rosa doesn't really have an aria in Sacco and Vanzetti. She has a beautiful duet and a trio, but I wanted to do something with this. No, the man that had the right to translate it and didn't know what he was doing absolutely forbade any other translation, and so that piece is basically dead on this side of the Atlantic, which is a shame because it's a really beautiful piece by a very talented group of collaborators. Now, there's another opera that was written by Francis Ford Coppola's nephew, uncle, Anton Coppola. And Benjamin Spierman was really in the unique position of having seen that opera and, of course, this opera, which he videotaped 21 years ago and then directed this time. And he told me that he had sat down with Coppola, and this is the way he put it. He said, in the Coppola opera, Sacco and Vanzetti are persecuted because they are Italians who happen to be anarchists. And in the Blitzstein opera, they are persecuted because they are anarchists who happen to be Italians. And in both cases, their being Italian is very important. But in Coppola's, it's the ultimate, you know. And and Coppola the most moving scene in Coppola's opera is a scene where Sacco goes mad because he thinks that his wife Rosa is being unfaithful to him. This never happened. I mean, she did marry someone else after he died, but there was never any infidelity. And Coppola created this dramatic mad scene, and it's a very Italian, very melodramatic scene, and it's the most effective scene in his opera. But it's not true, and everything. And not only that, but he also talks about there being a mystery as to whether one of them might have been guilty. He quotes the anarchist Carlo Tresca, who he also makes a big character out of Fred Moore, who was this California lawyer that wore sandals and alienated the judge and so forth. Well, in his opera, they show him being fired, and in fact, he was fired by Sacco at one point. And he exits to the tune "California, Here I Come," going back to California. No, Fred Moore was very bitter, and this bitterness may have been passed on to Carlo Tresca, who then spread the rumor that maybe Sacco was actually guilty, which is ridiculous. The point it is shown in this opera very clearly, and by Herbert Ehrman, whose book Blitzstein knew and wrote in the back of. There were so many alibi witnesses, but they were all Italian, and they were discounted as being in codes and in conspiracy to lie. And who actually did the crime? Well, Herbert Ehrman found out who did the crime. It was the Morelli gang. Celestino Medeiros was part of the Morelli gang. He wouldn't name names, and so they killed him. But he implicated them pretty much by circumstantial evidence. And Ehrman interviewed the Morelli gang. But here's the kicker, which is not in this opera, although it could have been. And if the opera could have been longer, but couldn't, we would have put this in. There was a TV series, a TV special, NBC TV, that Marc Blitzstein attended. It was written and directed by Reginald Rose, who was famous later for 12 Angry Men and The Defenders. E.G. Marshall, who was the star of The Defenders, played Thompson in this, and Martin Balsam was Sacco, and Stephen Hill was Vanzetti. It was a marvelous teleplay. Marc Blitzstein was in the studio taking notes on the script, watching it. And for me, the most moving scene was when one of the witnesses, called Lola Andrews, was convinced that she saw Sacco at the murder, and she's a character. She's saying, "Oh, I'm hearing music. I always hear music all the time." And she's not in the opera, but she in the movie, in the original Rose movie, she is shown a photograph of Joe Morelli, and she says, "That's Sacco." So there you have it. there's the false identification. And this was based on what something that Lehrman actually did and was shown in the teleplay of Reginald Rose. There was a man named Eliezer, and I forget his last name. He was on the call, but I think he's gone. He called me. Well, actually, he wrote to me, and then I called him from California, and he told me that his grandfather had been a defense witness and had been called in by the defense, not because he saw anything, but because he heard Lola Andrews talking about how she didn't really see anything and was forced to confess to seeing something that she didn't see. So he was a defense witness against the prosecution's witness, Lola Andrews. And according to Eliezer, the judge ridiculed his accent and intimidated and impugned him on the stand. So this is what they were up against there. So it's still quite a story with lots and lots of permutations and ramifications for over 95 years.
Oh, yeah.
Cleo, where are you?
I'm like, where am I right now? Oh, I'm on the Upper West Side of New York City.
Okay. Do we have other people? Michael Neiman's in California. Do we have other people? Or Alberto Quaggiotto is in Italy, I think. Buonasera. Is he still there? Or Toto Cagese?
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm actually further away. I'm in the Middle East.
Where are you? In Bahrain?
In Bahrain, correct, yes.
But you're Italian?
I am, yes, of origin and born and brought up in Italy. Yes, definitely.
Where are you from in Italy?
The far north, Varese, next to Switzerland, basically.
I had a teacher whose last name was Varese. He was I'm thinking about the composer, Varese.
Varese. No, Villa Falletto is up near Torino, on that side. So Alberto, how did you hear about us?
Well, it's actually through now the name is Abrigliasciolta Diaferia. So Ombretta, a friend of mine.
I saw that. I saw their names.
Oh, yes.
And she sent me the link. And well, thank you very much for what you have done. It's amazing, really.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I don't put on the video. I'm around the house doing chores while I listen to you.
So where is Umberto?
Who?
Umbretta?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Umbretta. Is she in Italy?
Umbretta.
Yeah. She's in Italy at the moment, yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, she was on earlier. Yeah.
These are the wonderful, colorful Italian names that I've never encountered before. But especially the Umbrettos.
Umberto, yeah.
So
Alberto, you're in Bahrain. We had someone from Israel, Don Futterman, I think he was on.
Yes, that's right, for a very short time.
Yeah, and Abrigliasciolta, Diaferia, and Toto Cagese. Are you in Italy? Can you each of you unmute and talk to us? Hello?
I will ask them to unmute. And let's see, there she is. Ask to unmute, and we'll ask them to turn on their video.
Not away from the machine.
I just did some laundry.
Okay. Now Amercy Shields? This is a person I don't know. Is this Tom Shields?
Tom Shields is there too.
Tom Shields and Amercy Shields. Are there two different Shields here? Shieldses? I don't know. People walk away from their machine and then we can't talk to them anymore, which is too bad. Tom, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Are you hearing
Can't
me?
hear you.
Yes, he unmutes. No, wait a minute, didn't he?
He's unmuted, but you have to talk a little louder.
I believe I guess I'm unmuted now.
Yes, you are.
Correct.
Yes. Yes, my wife and I work. She's in a separate area. We're both here, and we are mainly here. I believe we saw you at Sten Pugliese's presentation.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, right.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, I was hoping Stan would be with us. He said he was going to try to come at the beginning, but I didn't see him. But Stanislav Pugliese is the head of the Italian department at Hofstra, and he actually co-hosted with me and Ben what we called a retrospective preview of the opera last October, a year ago, on 2 evenings where we showed the whole video from the piano performance of 2001, which Ben had videotaped and Helene started and I directed from the piano. And he talked about it then with us. And actually, Hofstra scheduled the opera 3 times for the Italian American Festival, and 3 times that festival was canceled in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And that's why we ended up at Lehman College, where Ben had a connection. He had just graduated from there, actually. And I asked Stan if I could talk to his class about it, and you're the result. You came because I talked to the class, and we appreciate that. So
and I would just like to compliment you on a wonderful production. Stan and I are both musicians. We're both trumpet players.
Oh,
in addition to him being a fantastic scholar, he's a musician as well. And it was educational and musical and wonderful.
well, thank you so much. So do you play the trumpet professionally then?
No, well, I have an undergraduate degree in trumpet. Went to the Berklee College of Music up in Boston. Currently
Yes.
retired.
Hello? Yeah, we're still on the Zoom call. I'm going to ask you for another question.
Why don't you call him back?
All right.
So anyway,
Well, we might be out to dinner.
I'll call you back. What's your phone
thank
number?
you so much.
Thank you.
The wonders of modern technology.
Okay.
We
So-
have 85 phones here.
Your wife, is she also a musician? Is she there? Does she want to say hello?
Hello. Yes, like Tom said, it was a great experience for me to learn more about this case and be aware of what issues in the past, and we're living it right now.
Thank you. I hear an accent. Am I right? Am I correct?
Yes, my family is from the Dominican Republic.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I love that.
So
Well,
I was-
we're good at detecting that. Helene makes especially an accent reduction in English speech. She teaches that as an addition to voice.
Uh,
And Tom is of Italian and Irish extraction. My
Ah.
mother is from Reggio Calabria, and her name was Antonore. So I'm similar to Chloe in that I have mixed heritage
Uh-huh.
and
Very
an Italian mother.
Cleo.
thank you. Thank
Speaking
you.
of Cleo, Cleo posed a question in the chat to Henry. How did you feel being the foreman of this corrupt jury? Corrupt rated jury.
Self-righteous, of course. I mean, again, you have to understand, all right? You know, sometimes all of us is worse than one of us. You know, especially when you have, you know, a group of people, you do have, you know, you have this group think. You know, people are propelled by, I mean, you know, we're propelled by the people around us. We trust the people around us who trust what we're thinking, who trust what they're thinking. And, you know, if a negative thought can basically quickly spiral from a gentle breeze into a giant hurricane. Quite frankly,
While you have you on this, I'm going to ask you a question that has been actually intriguing me. Ben Spierman first directed an opera of mine called New World, an opera about what Columbus did to the quote
Oh
Indian
boy.
30 years ago. Nancy was in it, Helene was in it, and that was the first opera he directed. This was his 125th opera.
And Janice was in it.
And Janice was in it too. She played the Indian princess. Yeah, she was marvelous. But anyhow, he was a very talented director 30 years ago. Now he's a brilliant director, absolutely brilliant. And I say this because every time I look at this video, I see things that he has done that I didn't even notice before, just little details. And one of the details that I noticed that he did with you, Henry, which I didn't tell him to do, he just did it, or maybe you did. You can tell me how that happened. You, when they were talking about the soldiers and not giving up their lives in France, you got up and started scolding everybody. You know, was that your idea or his idea?
I think that was my idea. I mean, I you know, I'm not an actor. You know, so I tried to think about you know, when I would say actually to all the people listening to me, again, as I mentioned, there was a lot of effort, you know, a lot of grind to this particular production, you know, but nevertheless, you know, the intelligent person would like to say, you know, I've learned something from this process. And that also, it does mean more than just reading the book and reading the lines and listening to the music. Hopefully you can basically, you know, you put a piece of yourself into a production like this, and you know that that piece will still be left behind. It'll be a part of the production. So Ben basically said, you know, go ahead if you have some thoughts about how to act or how to react, and you know, he gave a wonderfully you know, a very succinct little thing. He says, don't let the production own you. You own the production. So that was what I tried to do. I tried to think of, you know, what the people would, you know, how they would be reacting directly, and how basically to, you know, to convey that in some little bit of acting. That's what I tried to do.
Well, you were really very, very good. And Ben told me very complimentary things about you. He's really pleased about you. I mean, we've known you for a long time, mostly as a singer in choruses and not as an actor, as you said. But Ben and I were both just delighted at the way you grew as an actor and took over scenes. It was really very, very wonderful having you in so many ways. Let's see.
Yes, and I noticed when you gave him the towel, how
oh yeah, you just
you
threw
were
it at
having to do something.
Yeah,
Oh, it's wonderful.
that was a good nuance too.
Really, really good. Every little things.
Good.
I never saw any of this until I put the script and the technical stuff together last night at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, well,
it was really fun to watch.
This production, and what's wonderful about a work like this is that every time you see it, you see something else you hadn't seen before, or hear something you hadn't heard. And most of it's good. so sometimes I have to say that there are passages in the, now that the publisher isn't here, I can say that some of the places where the orchestra is really, as they'd say in German, auseinander, they're not really quite together. And one of my favorite stories, Ralph Locke knows this, is that Alan Mandel, the son-in-law of Elie Siegmeister, for whom he was a terrific pianist. Elie wrote lots of piano sonatas and concertos for him. And sometimes he would play a piece and just botch up a passage. And Elie would say, well, I could have written it that way. And I'm afraid there were quite a number of passages like that where I had to say, well, I could have written it that way. I just couldn't get it any better from what was available in the video. But it flowed anyway, I think, didn't it? Phyllis Perna hasn't said anything, and our dear co-host Delaney Page hasn't really said anything, although I saw some very nice comments in the chat. Phyllis or Delaney, would you like to unmute? And then after that, maybe we'll ask Bill and Madonna Pacer if they're still there and they want to unmute and say something. Anybody there?
Hello out there.
Hi, Delaney. You want to unmute? There you go.
Yes, I am unmuted.
There you
I
are.
mean, I really enjoyed it. Like, I mean, I was like writing down the part that I enjoyed most, which was, I think it was that line with a woman to be, but the part that SACCO sang, that was so emotionally charged, like, and just the way it resolved, I thought.
Isn't that a beautiful
Perfect.
piece? That's the one complete aria that Blitzstein wrote from start to finish. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and it's also the only part of the opera that was performed before I started working on it, because Leonard Bernstein conducted that piece on April 11th, 1964, at what was then called Philharmonic Hall, and Luigi Alva sang it. And it's a gorgeous piece. And in fact, Henry Price sang it 17 years ago in a National Opera Association convention. It's one of Blitzstein's great pieces, and I'm so glad that that you felt that way about it too. Was that the only thing you wrote down, or some other things you wrote down too? I'm curious.
In general, I thought that the method of storytelling was much more effective to convey like the emotions of the story and like why it is important for just reading it. Like, you don't get the same thing out of just like reading that like cut and dry facts happened is when you like see it happening to them.
Yeah, yeah. The emotions are so taught, and I mean, and Blitzstein was working very hard on this. He put it aside to work on Tales of Malamud, and solved some problems in this work, in those works. But what I was pleased about was that basically the musical climax in the middle and the dramatic climax toward the end, those are both something that I brought, because Dukakis hadn't yet exonerated them. And I was taken to task for running something that happened in 1977 in a work that was abandoned or not abandoned, but left unfinished in 1964. But it was my firm belief, shared by the Blitzstein estate, that if Marc had been alive and had not yet finished the opera, or even if he had, he might revise the opera in 1977 to have the Dukakis exoneration be the closure, as it was of the case, be the closure of the opera. And the other thing that, of course, I mentioned in the middle was that how to end this very moving love duet, where you have SACCO and Rosa singing this love duet that comes in part from Reuben and in part written for the opera. And then how do you resolve that? Well, that's when this Torre Maggiore Villa Falletto idea occurred to me. On the train as it passing the hills of Amalfi, says, "My Nina, I see the hills of Amalfi." We had just sung that in Florence, actually, in a concert, and I said, "Oh my God, the hills of Amalfi, my Torre Maggiore, my Villa Falletto." It just flowed, and it just felt right, and that's the part that always brings me to tears when I hear that. And in fact, just. Right after we did SACCO and VANZETTI in 2001, Helene and I took a trip to Australia and did a song cycle there that I'd written for her there. And when we came back, she told me that after 15 years of asking, yes, she's going to marry me. And she married me at Stephen Wise Free Synagogue. And that trio was sung by Greg Mercer, who created SACCO, and Helene and me at our wedding reception. So, it's a very personal piece, and the whole opera is a very personal piece, obviously. We haven't heard
getting frozen.
Phyllis Perna, or from who else? I think that's it. And our Italian friends, Abrigliasciolta di Diaferia is unmuted. Can you talk to us? Parla. Hello? No, unmuted but not speaking. Perri, do you want to say something again? Oh wait, here. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Dove? Dove vuoi? Where are you?
He's asleep.
Well, it's like 11:30 at night there, right?
Oh, she says she has a problem with her voice. Ho problema di voce. It's in the chapter.
Oh, okay, no problema. Okay, grazie. Okay, everyone. I live in Varese. Rosa was beautifully sung.
I agree. Brava diva.
Brava diva, right? Yes, it was. You really did so
really,
beautiful.
Really, absolutely magnificent.
So, all right, so Perri, do you want to say something? And then I'm going to give my wife the last word, because it's always good to give your wife the last word.
Well, thank you so much. It was, really a different experience to see it in its entirety, because you're backstage and never really got to see it all. It's like one continuous thing, so that was a real treat.
Yeah, it's great.
Breaking up there.
I think Bill Pacer has left us. He wasn't. Bill hasn't been.
Bill was on and off.
Oh, okay. So, Helene, do you want to have the last word?
Always.
Always.
My Leonard, I see our SACCO and VANZETTI.
No, VANZETTI.
We'll see it again and again.
I
Cool.
think
Thank
so.
you so much for coming. And if you want to catch up with anything, the links to the YouTube are in the chat.
And they will be public now.
They'll be public, or you can find any of Leonard's videos by going to, and you tell us that, Leonard, slowly.
LJ Lehrman dot artists, that's plural artists, -in residence ce.com. That's ljlehrman.artistsinresidence.com. And a page will come up there and it says Leonard Lehrman's operas. You can go to any of the 12. SACCO and Vanzetti is the 9th, as I recall. And on that page, you have all kinds of things. And there will be a link to this video. We will be setting that up tonight. It felt like the morning of humanity. Is that the Cleo? Cleo, do you want to unmute? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just making more comments because like there was an interplay between the voices that had an effect on itself too. And there were not many female voices in this opera, but Rosa's really stood out. Like every time it came through, it was like, this is everyone wailing for the situation. This is the really the emotion is coming through in this voice, whereas more of the story was coming through in other voices. And it was just interesting the way the sounds worked for the characters.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that.
Yeah, well, Mrs. Evans is also a very strong role. In fact, she's the role that Marc Blitzstein identified with the most. I was telling Sarah Blaze when she was playing it that basically Marc was writing about his grandmother. His grandmother owned an immigrant bank and was the anchor of the family financially, and made it possible for Marc to do what he did financially. But she also could be very mean. He had to ask her permission and for money every time he had a music lesson. So he grew up with love for her, but also this resentment and feeling of self-hatred for his class, and that's portrayed in this. I mean, you see her. She says, "This is ugly." I don't like charities. And she's a very self-conflicted character, but she wants to help, and she feels that because she says, "My country is in peril. I want to help men like you do what you." And she's a very, very important character. And of course, as you say, there are relatively few female parts in the opera. That's why I decided to make, one reason I decided to make part of Celestino Medeiros, who's a boy of 16 when he commits that murder, and 23 by the time we executed. But I made him into a trouser role, which Perri did so beautifully. And originally the clerk was also so low that we actually couldn't even find a woman to do it this time around. And so we have I had a tenor do it. It could be tenor or mezzo soprano, but in this case we used a tenor. Okay, I'm hearing some noise. Maybe it's time to pack it up. It's actually a half an hour later than I thought we were going to stop, but it's been so much fun having you all and talking to you all. And Helene, really take the last word and take us out.
Well, what is the last word anyway? Ciao!
Love, l'amore.
Amore, you're a doll. You too, my dear. Okay, everyone. Bye-bye, and thank you so much for coming, as I said before. And my other last word.
Grazie.